Okay, I think we can start. It's 9:32. So once again, very good morning to you all. Thanks for everyone joining today, for joining this webinar by the EU-funded project COLLARIS2. It will be a webinar on the public perception of drones in disaster management. So we'll hear about drone acceptance in Europe. My name is Johanna Zweiger. I'm with DCNA, Disaster Competence Network Austria, one of the partners within this project, and I'm responsible for communication and dissemination of this project. A very quick go through the agenda for today. So we'll have a very short introduction of the COLLARIS network, and then followed by the main part of today, the findings and the conclusions of the meta-study done by my colleague Jasmina Smit. And then finally, we will have a short Q&A session, and my colleague Anna Kobiaszewska from Poland will go through the COLLARIS planned activities for next year, 2026. If you have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A tool. We will collect the questions and then, like I said, go through them at the end. And also, just so you are aware, the webinar is being recorded, so we can share it afterwards with everyone who maybe couldn't join today but would like to watch it anyway. So yeah, the first speaker of today was, as I said, Anna Kobiaszewska. She is a senior expert at the Space Research Center of the Polish Academy of Sciences, and she is the coordinator of the COLLARIS network, the COLLARIS2 project. And yeah, she makes sure that everything runs smoothly, so to speak. And yeah, I think that's all I can say for now. And over to you, Anna.
Thank you. Thank you, Jasmina. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar. I will give you a very brief overview of the COLLARIS network scope of activities, who we are, what we are doing, so that you have the broader context, and then I will give the floor to Jasmina to actually present the results of her study. So let me start with my favorite slide. That is a map of COLLARIS network members and associated partners. Why is it my favorite slide? Because I still have in mind the first, let's say, version of that back in 2023 when we started our activities. We had 5 partners from 5 member states in the core consortium and 5 other institutions as associated partners. So altogether there were 10 of us. And now, 2 years later, you can see 8 core consortium partners from 7 member states, plus 20 associated partners, covering almost half of Europe, with one international partner, that is International Emergency Drone Organization, so-called IEDO. And what is not visible on the slide, we have established cooperation with CERIS Group, with Responder Technology Cluster on CMINE, and with the Direction Network. So we started out, as I said, as a small group of drone enthusiasts, and I think we have grown quite significantly. So that's why this is my favorite slide to show. What we are, who we are. And we are trying to build a network of stakeholders interested in the use of drones for crisis management, civil protection, and related applications. We welcome both institutions, first responders, academia, even companies, which already use drones in their operational activities. But also we are very open to other institutions or even individual experts who are only starting or are about to start using drones, and they would like to learn from their more, let's say, experienced colleagues, because we believe that sharing lessons learned, transferring knowledge and experience is the best possible way. Let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's learn from each other, from our experiences. Our ambition is to become a kind of like a distributed knowledge center for the use of drones in civil protection. We want to discuss not just present but also future applications of drones, what is going to be possible in a couple of years, and what are the current and future obstacles that we need to overcome in order to use drones in an even more efficient way. So how do we do it? We organize thematic workshops, webinars, and conferences like the one you have joined today. We carry out field trials. So we actually go out in the field and experiment with innovative applications of drones. We have some trainings and virtual simulations. We carry out research activities, studies, and analysis. And one example you will have in a couple of minutes. As I said, we are gathering and sharing best practices, supporting the uptake of lessons learned, and we try to support both individual and institutional capacity building activities. And for that purpose, we are also using the Union Civil Protection mechanism of the Exchange of Experts program, which has proven a very efficient tool for networking. So very briefly, past, let's say, edition of COLLARIS, so the first 2 years of our project. We were focused on the 6 main lines of activities. So operational procedures, lessons learned, and best practices of using UAS. Air traffic management challenges. This is the condition sine qua non for actually being able to fly drones in a safe and coordinated manner, and also to be able to fly both drones and manned aviation at the same time over the same area of a crisis. This is the challenge that we are facing all over Europe. There are different ways and means of dealing with the problem, but this is a key issue for the use of drones. Another key issue is data analysis and data sharing. Once we have drones in the air, they gather a lot of useful data. So how do we process the data? How do we share the data to make sure that we all have the same common operational picture and we can act accordingly? Drones are more than just flying guys. They may have different auxiliary support systems. So COLLARIS is also interested in exploring that less obvious ways of using drones. We want to increase end user competences. But we are not talking here about training the drone pilots, because this is easy and it can be done, online. What we are focusing on is rather the training for the incident commanders, the training on the tactical use of drones, not just how to fly a drone, but how to use it in the most efficient way during the emergency situation. Here you can see a list of our analysis and reports which are available on the project website and also on the UCPM Knowledge Network library. And here is where we are now, so COLLARIS2. We are focused on 6 thematic areas, 6 operational practices. So drones as the first on scene, what happens when the drone is there before the actual human first responders. Drones for wildfires, led by Valabr. This is the major threat, especially in the southern part of Europe, but due to the climate change, wildfires are becoming also more and more significant problem in countries like Poland, Sweden, or Austria. Drones can fly on their own, so how do we develop autonomous operations with the drones? How do we use drones for flooding? This is actually the major natural threat in countries like Poland. Drones used for mapping and coordination of flights. As I said, we believe this is the key aspect of the use of drones. Here you can also see a list of activities that we are currently carrying out or will carry out in the next year, aiming at support for uptake of the lessons learned. And I want to underline the first one. So we are gathering the most interesting and popular operational use case for drones. We have already 2 of them published on our website, but we are really looking to gathering more. So here is my request for you. If you have an interesting use case and you would like to share it with the others, then please let us know, contact us, and we will be happy to learn more about your experience and share it with the others if this is relevant. We are also carrying out the structured overview of national drone regulations, as I said, and general air traffic management challenges and issues. We are preparing some, let's say, educational and training materials, but they will be released next year. We are keeping up our work related to data analysis and data sharing. So what are the solutions available, open source solutions, and how do we use them? And last but not least, we carry out with our communication and dissemination activities, of which today's webinar is one of the examples. So if you want to learn more about COLLARIS project and our activities, here you can see our website, our LinkedIn profile, and also email address. So feel free to contact us if you have anything to share about using drones for civil protection and crisis management, or if you would like to join our future activities. And with that, I would like to give the floor to Yasmina to present the results of her analysis. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Anna. Maybe you can stop sharing now also, Yasmina.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. And I'll, in the meantime, I'll introduce Yasmina, my DCNA colleague, Yasmina Schmidt. She's a social scientist specializing in disaster research and an expert in risk perception and communication. She completed her studies in communication sciences and social and cultural anthropology at the Free University of Berlin, and earned a master's degree in global development and planning from the University of Agder in Norway. Her methodological and research interests lie in ethnographic and qualitative social science approaches, risk perception, and the role of narratives in disaster management. At DCNA, she manages and contributes to several EU-funded projects, not just COLLARIS, where she focuses primarily on technology acceptance and bridging the gap between scientific research and the practical needs of disaster management professionals, just like DCNA is also trying to do. So yeah, that's Yasmina Schmidt. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and also a very warm welcome to the participants from my side. Yeah, I'm really excited to share some insights about a study that I conducted the past 9 months, basically since the beginning of COLLARIS2. And this might be a bit of a different kind of context and focus that we have than usual when we talk about drones. So yeah, I'm really happy for all the participants today. What we're gonna do is gonna give you a bit of an explanation of why I think it is important to look at public perception in this context. And as a scientist, of course, methods are important to me, so I'm just gonna give you a short overview of how I conducted the study. It was twofold. So the first part consisted of a meta-study literature review of already existing published studies in the European context. And that was followed up by a small interview study. So I'm gonna show you the results of both of them. And then from this interview study, kind of the conclusion of also insights for practitioners, for practice, to look at best practices that are already in place to strengthen trust and acceptance for the use of drones in disaster management, but also looking at what is still needed, where are the gaps seen from the practitioners in that area. All right, let's get it started here. And if you have any questions coming up during my talk, please put them directly in the Q&A before you forget it maybe, and then we can come back to it in the end. And I don't think this is something new for any of you. Drones have been used more and more at the moment in disaster management. There's a growing role of it, which means they're also seen by people. There are tools that are quite visible in the sky, not as maybe other technologies or tools used, where they might be in a more concluded area where the public doesn't see them. They're out in the sky. So people form opinions about them, mostly through media, if they don't have a direct experience with them. And this picture can be quite grim. So if we look at the studies that I will present later on, there is some concern about surveillance, about privacy issues, but also the misuse of drones and espionage. And as well as when we look at the past few weeks only, like the context of conflict and war as well, of course, is not to be disregarded. So we have this challenge basically as an emergency service, as a disaster management organization to deal with those two sides. We want to use drones in an efficient manner because they give us that many opportunities and like reduce resource or can help us reduce resources and time, but also we have to deal with this kind of interplay of how the public sees them. If they are scared, maybe if there is some outrage, we have to maybe deal with that. So why is it important to look at this public perception? Because if we know how the drones are perceived, this knowledge can help us shape communication, maybe also policy making, and maybe coming from this more industry perspective or research perspective to also help us with responsible innovation. Just a short overview of the methods. Like I said, the literature review was conducted using the PRISMA guidelines. So I included peer-reviewed journal articles and conference reports of the past 10 years, so from 2015 to 2025. There is to say that I stopped taking articles into consideration that were published until March 2025. So the past half year is not included, and it's only scientific articles. That means the studies could be conducted way before the publication, as a lot of us might know. To publish an article can take quite some time. So the date of publication and the data collected, there might be 1 or 2 years in between. I included studies that focused on public perception, attitudes, or the social acceptance of drones. So mainly this social side of things. There were some articles, for instance, talking about perception in a technical manner, like drone perception in the sense of what the drone sees, or how it moves in the field. So those obviously were not included. And the studies were only focused on Europe in general. So studies in different countries. There are a lot of interesting studies conducted, for instance, in the Global South, especially when it comes to medical logistics. Yeah, concerned with the focus of the study, I only included the studies in Europe. There were one or two who did comparative analysis of European countries with the US. So the US, there is some info in those studies about the US that I will include in this presentation because I thought it was quite interesting. And the idea was to look at the three countries of Austria, Poland, and Sweden in particular. First of all, because they have a quite diverse public perception and acceptance, but also the three countries are one of the main, or we have the partners in those countries from the start of the project, so it was easier for me to also reach experts. For that, I have to say that there are no studies directly focusing on one of those countries. So the results that I have for those countries are only in studies that are looking at a more broader scale of Europe, mostly, or have like multiple countries in them in the studies. About the interview study was a more exploratory design with 9 semi-structured interviews conducted online with experts in disaster management from different fields there, from fire departments, emergency services, police. I tried to have a bit of a spread between urban and rural areas, and yeah, focusing on those 3 countries. All right. So going to the literature study, my main research questions that I wanted to answer with this meta-study was what actually are the attitudes towards drones in the public, and across which dimensions differs this perception and attitudes. And for that, also maybe as a caveat, before it was many studies were about drones in general or different use cases. So I included all of the studies looking at drones. So I didn't discriminate or didn't only look at studies conducted in disaster management, because that was unfortunately too small of a sample. So to give you a bit of a more graphic overview of that, in the end, I found 34 articles of relevance to those aforementioned categories that I was searching for. And interestingly, I found at least like half of those articles were published in 2023 or later. So in the past 2 years, there was a big rise in articles, in studies looking into this topic, which also kind of points to the current relevance of looking at public perception in this field. On the left-hand side, you can see where those studies were conducted. So I don't know if you can see my mouse, but most, or the majority of studies were looking at multiple countries at once. Kind of the same number of articles didn't disclose at which countries they're looking at, or were just looking at Europe in general. Some countries with more studies on were Germany, the Czech Republic, but there is to say that is basically one researcher who published 3 articles. And then Portugal as well, which with 4 articles on them, and maybe Switzerland, and the rest with like smaller samples where like one study only focuses on this country. When it comes to the use case of drone usage, the studies were focusing on, we have a big part where they're looking at drones in general, maybe also comparing different use cases. There's also a big research interest in delivery drones and urban air mobility, which means they were mainly asking people if they would be willing to use a drone for e-commerce or food delivery. There is a separate category that opened up for healthcare logistics. So there are two studies solely focusing on that. And then we have, just like one study each for humanitarian use, military, policing, emergency and rescue. And then a bit of bigger part as well with agriculture, where mostly farmers were asked if they plan to invest in this technology or if they're already using it. The research design kind of depends as well with how I look at it. So the delivery, urban air mobility, mostly deployed surveys, like I said, asking, would you be using it? Where do you see the benefits? Where do you see the risks? The general use case studies applied a bit of a broader approach with also qualitative, meaning interviews, focus group discussions, for instance, with like broader answers possible, and also some experimental designs in it. And then coming to the second bigger research question that I had, to across which dimensions does this public perception differ? And here also it's important, or maybe for you to understand, I didn't bring numbers with me because those studies were so diverse, also in the way of asking about attitudes and perception, that it was basically impossible to bring it all together. So what I want to present here today is like a more general feeling of public perception and where the differences are in the public, because we don't have a thing as the public. So also not really surprising, the scope of application or the use case in which drones are used highly is relevant for how drones are perceived. So we have a high acceptance of drone usage in rescue, search and rescue, in disaster management, also medical logistics. There is like a medium acceptance for infrastructure, surveillance, or like looking at infrastructure. Also research, environmental research has a medium to high acceptance, and where it really drops for when it comes to attitudes is private flights, it's hobby flying, is hobby photography. So yeah, there is quite a big gap in that sense when it comes to the use case. A lot of studies also were focusing on the risks that are perceived by the public, and here we can see also the things mentioned and things that already are conveyed by media quite a lot is the fear of surveillance, of breach of personal rights, of taking pictures of me in my garden, for instance, in private disclosed areas. Because of the scope of the studies as well, there is the risk seen in job loss, for instance, through delivery drones, and of misuse and criminal use as well, that cannot be overlooked. Benefits particularly seen as in reduction of resources, or like the better application of resources. Also, coming back to delivery drones as well, maybe a reduction of emissions and traffic on the ground, but there's also kind of counting in as seen as a risk, like a conjunction of the air as like the opposite side of that. And here maybe as well having this cognitive effect that we observe in risk perception studies in general is that quite often, especially for people who don't have a direct experience with the technology, risks outweigh the benefits. So even if people can see both sides, they see pro and con, the con side quite often overrules the pro side. I think, yeah, this cognitive happening in the brain. When it comes to the operator, and also kind of pays in with the use case, it highly depends on who is using the drone, if it's an official use, if it's visible who's using the drone, also influences attitudes towards drones. The location in which it is used is a relevant factor. So in regulated areas, in more rural areas, away from people, there is a high acceptance. And contrary, in urban, highly populated, dense areas, there is a low acceptance. Also, probably not surprising for anybody involved in this field. Demographics, also kind of mirroring similar studies on technology acceptance in general. We have younger people who are more open to the use of drones than older people. We have, generally speaking, men more open to it, whereas women tend to focus more on the risks, which is, yeah, also kind of a tendency that we see in other studies of technology, or like just generally risk perception as well. The women tend to be more risk averse. People with experience more open than people who have no direct contact with it, and people who are technophile, who are more open towards new technologies, also obviously more open to the use of drones. Culture, also one of the reasons that I tried to look at different countries as well in Europe. So in Poland, for instance, which is one of the reasons that I chose Poland, has the highest acceptance of drones and really, really high general acceptance of drones for all use cases, even delivery drones, where we see in other countries there's quite a drop. Austria and Germany as well, they're kind of head on with a more skeptical view on them, highlighting just this fear of misuse and privacy issues. And I don't know if you, I'm German, for instance, so this is an issue that we see in a lot of different areas as well, like privacy related things are quite high contention, just from a cultural standpoint. But in all of the countries in Europe, it's quite clear that like governance or like if they're seen something as a common good, those use cases and applications are definitely highly accepted. And here we come to the experience from the US that I found really interesting, is that it's the reverse. So we have low acceptance for drones used by the government and a high acceptance of drones used by private companies, for instance, which also shows how political systems and worldviews also influence perception in this area. Knowledge and experience already talked about, and emotions and symbols. This is something coming from those studies with more qualitative approaches. So what kind of came out there is like people talking a lot of in symbols when it comes to drones. So the eye in the sky, meaning also a bit of a more negative view for them quite often as surveillance, and just this symbolic interactionism as a tool, or it's an interesting research perspective as well to see how drones are represented. Maybe also for further research to look at media coverage as well, and how this influences how we perceive them, especially for people who don't have this direct experience. I'm gonna move forward to the interview study, where my main question was to what extent is public perception influences current operational practices and decision-making processes regarding the use of drones in crisis and disaster management. And maybe also if you're not, just a food for thought maybe, is that we don't operate in a vacuum. We all involved in our social environment, and even if we're not thinking about it actively, it does influence how we see the world, what we see as ethical. So this is one of the points that I found it interesting to look at, to see if like the surrounding world that each of us have, in what way does it influence our decision making when it comes to the use of drones. So in the context of the studies, the main factors when it came to looking at what decisions I have to take, or what are the main framework basically of how and when I can use a drone, I try to cluster it in three factors here. Start with the organizational factors. So the drone has to be there. I have to have a drone, and otherwise I cannot use it. It's quite the first obvious point, but also I have to have the knowledge and positive attitudes in the organization, especially in decision making, to kind of foster this decision towards using drones. I have to know for what the drone is good for, in which situations, and have to see the benefits of its use. Otherwise, I tend to use other tools and practices. So this comes also back to the education in the organization. If I have, for instance, in Austria, we have quite a large volunteer system in fire brigades, for instance. So they do it in their free time. And therefore, I might have to do different educational activities to inform them about drones. So we have information evenings. I have to integrate use of drones in my drills and exercises to kind of come to this point of institutionalization. And organizational culture also plays a big role in that. The openness generally for new technologies has to be there. Otherwise, maybe I'm a bit averse to using them. Regulation, quite a clear point. I have to know and I have to be able to use the drone in the circumstance that I am in, to either to even use them in the end. And to the point of legitimacy, as we have seen before in the studies, especially in disaster management, there is a high acceptance rate. And this is also due to the fact that emergency services, especially rescue services and fire brigades, but also police, are highly trusted by the public, and therefore also the practices that they do, and then kind of following up on that, the technologies they use are more accepted in those kind of circumstances. And this is something that we can use, obviously, to foster this acceptance as well. And the third point that was from my social science perspective and my heart going towards social sciences was for me the most interesting part as well, is there is a lot of gray areas that I have to kind of circumvent, that are happening maybe more informally in my head. There is no fixed rules on that, and it's more like one of the interviewees termed it as a matter of feeling, of assessment, if it's I have to see what is the context of where I want to use a drone. For instance, if there is danger for a person, in contrary to what uninvolved people might be feeling. So if it's just a surveillance flight I have over an area, that might be not necessary. And on the opposite side, I have a swimming pool, for instance, that is fully crowded. I might decide not to use the drone. Whereas if I have an alarm that a person is drowning in the area, I definitely would use it. So I have this interplay as well of, yeah, benefits versus, yeah, just the social norms as well that are in yeah, my social environment, and which I grew up in, for instance. It's also coming back a lot to culture as well. I don't have a view on the clock, but I think I'm going to hurry up a bit. Coming to the best practices that are already in place in those 3 countries of the experts that I interviewed in, that I want to give you some insights and maybe ideas as well if you're thinking about how can I strengthen trust and acceptance in the use of drones. In my area, so what came up a lot is there is already some progress in having those drone licenses, of having this government regulation to be able to separate between toy drones and professional drones, to have this increased trust through training, and to have the public see, okay, this is not somebody who just bought something from Amazon and using it in their garden, but this is like a process of people who are trained and who know what they're doing. So this is already one point that people were seeing. This is something that increased trust in the past few years. Another point that was quite interesting is, like, even if emergency services were using drones but not wearing uniforms, the possibility of them being approached by people asking them what you're doing, maybe also sometimes in an aggressive manner, was way higher than when they were wearing a uniform, a high visibility vest, for instance, to signal, okay, it's an official use, it's not a private use. So yeah, this is, I think, a very easy thing to do when out in the field, just to kind of calm nerves, to reduce concerns and complaints, to kind of open up this picture of, yeah, this is a professional use and this is a use for the common good. Similar things is done with visual identification of the drones and in itself. So some organizations are putting corporate designs on it, pilot stripes, for instance, and there is some tryouts now with blue light markings to also have this reference to blue light organizations in general. So I would be interested to hear what the experiences are with that, if it makes a difference. And yeah, so this is one of the things that can be done to increase recognizability. Last point, and I think this is also a really important one, is to be a bit more outgoing with use cases when drones were used in practice, where they brought on benefits. This thing again with the common good, to showcase drones, of course, on the one hand side, are used for malicious intent, for in conflict areas, but it's not one thing or the other. They also can be used for the good, and it's important to bring that out also in the public sphere, maybe with media relations, but also have open houses, or maybe if there are already open houses, to showcase the drone, have demonstrations, community events, for also people to lose a bit of their fear, because if people see something experienced something, those kind of maybe more diffuse concerns can be reduced. Last but not least, where there is still need for adjustment seen by those experts. So of course we have those rules, and having those rules is great, but they also need to be enforced. So having unsafe flying quite often by private drones damages the overall impression. So we need clearer rules, and maybe also sometimes people don't really know what the rules are. They don't want to break them necessarily, but maybe it's a bit confusing. So having clear guidelines, maybe also the opportunity to directly contact somebody to ask would be helpful. Maybe also through an IT tool. So this could ensure compliance and have a more positive public image. Another point that came up was the digital identification and visibility, to have an IT system, for instance, where people can quickly look up when they see a drone, for instance, who's using it. This is in place already in a lot of areas, but I heard from Sweden, for instance, that emergency services are exempt. But think that maybe it would be good to have this digital identification for them as well, because people can just quickly verify and have clarity of who's using it. And also last point, coming back to the point made before, media is often the most important source of information, and we need more drones for good narratives to have this positive reporting on rescue and disaster management to increase the acceptance. All right, I think I have 10 minutes and perfect timing on my side, so I hope I can pat myself on the shoulder. Thank you for your attention, and I'm really looking forward to your questions in the Q&A. Just maybe a bit of a heads up, this research is kind of put into a deliverable that is at the moment at DG ECHO, and when it's approved, we will put it also in our social media challenges and can be found on the ECPKN platform. So please keep posted if you want to know more. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yasmina, for these very insightful presentations. We can now, I think, have a very brief Q&A session. There have been 2 questions already. One is a more technical one, so to speak, namely the question whether we will share the slides. Anna, over to you for this one.
Okay, yes, we will share the slides, but also the idea is for this webinar to be recorded. Then it will be also available on the COLLARIS2 project website. So have a look at it in a couple of weeks, and then you should have the full recording also available.
Yes, that's true. That's not just the slides, but also the commentary with the slides. So that's quite useful, I think. There was another question. What is the percentage of forest surveillance? I'm not exactly sure. It's a question from Vasilios. Yasmina, do you know what could be meant here?
Maybe the question points at the public perception of forest surveillance. If it's that, I cannot give you an answer to that because the studies didn't really have that as one of the use cases. The only related maybe use case was environmental research, basically. So if it points to forest fire surveillance, then I cannot give you an answer. When it comes to just environmental research in general, where drones are used, then the acceptance rates are quite high, not as high as rescue and disaster management, but still quite high, I think around 70%, but I would have to look it up. And if you're interested in it, maybe just shoot me an email, I can send you the relevant publication.
you. Are there any more questions at this point? If there are none, let's wait for a few more seconds. We can maybe move on to the 2026 activity section.
Can you share the slide?
Yes. Do you see it?
Yes, I think you just have to move to the next one.
Yeah,
Next
I don't know why it's, yeah. Give me a second. So, yeah, there you go.
There we are. Okay, over to you, Anna. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just a brief update about the next activities planned under COLLARIS2. Well, still in November, not listed on the slide, but next week there is a EU Science for Preparedness conference in Turin, and COLLARIS Network is going to have a poster there. So if any one of you is attending the conference in Turin, you can find COLLARIS poster and our colleague from DCNA there, so you can have, like a chance to talk to DCNA and to learn more about COLLARIS. And also in November, but on the 28th, we will have a joint webinar with the Direction project about the use of drones in civil protection, and we will have a presentation from the Czech Republic as the end user, from Norway, and from Polish Air Navigation Services Agency. So stay tuned for that. We will share more information, of course, in due course. It will be, as I said, the 28th of November. So that's it for 2025. For 2026, we will have several trials coming up. So the trial is a practical use of drone. So we will have one trial in Poland, which will be synchronized with a bigger field exercises of the State Fire Service. We will have a trial in Sweden focused on virtual simulation and training happening probably around April, but this is still to be confirmed. And we will have a smaller scale trials in the Netherlands and Cyprus. What we will also have, this is a continuous activity, it's the overview and selection of the drone use cases. As Yasmina said in her presentation, the level of acceptance by the public is also clearly linked to the use case. So we need more positive, let's say, drone-related stories, and we are counting on your help there. Air traffic management recommendations, challenges, problems. This is an ongoing study that we are conducting, and we will come up with the recommendations at the end of the project. We are also carrying out a structured overview of national drone regulations. And another analysis that is being conducted or is about to be conducted again by Yasmina from the CNA is the analysis of the use of drones in volunteer versus professional organizations. So what are the differences? What are the similarities in the use of drones by volunteers and professional rescue services? And last but not least, we are working on e-learning materials to be shared with the general public, and they will include the Air Operations Coordinator course and virtual simulation scenarios for incident commanders training. So if any of those topics listed here in this slide is of interest to you, please feel free to contact us, and we will share more details as soon as they are available. And of course, you have the standing invitation to attend all our future webinars and trials for the next year. So with that, I think over to you, Johanna, for the conclusions and summary.
Yes, there was another question from Marco who would like to have the slides sent by email. We will be happy to do that and send them to you. I think there's not much more to say. Be sure to follow us on LinkedIn and the UCKPN platform. I will end the recording now because we will not ask you to take a little group picture, but I don't think that needs to be in the recording for anyone watching. That's not interesting, I guess. So thank you very much for watching. The participants of today, please stay for 2 more minutes, and yeah, then we will conclude this webinar. So thank you to the ones watching online, and have a good day and goodbye.